are in an era of Hollywood cinema that has become dominated by sequels, reboots, remakes, and spin-offs, with original ideas or riskier, more inventive approaches to existing IPs all too often being avoided. As such, it's great when a movie takes steps to subvert expectations and do something different. Right? Well, on paper, yes. Unfortunately, things don't always work out for the better. In Hollywood, there is sometimes a frustrating tendency of those behind a film seeming to assume that subversion in and of itself is automatically a win. But that's really not the case. It's not enough to just be different for the sake of it. It's vital to subvert expectations in a way that feels earned, and to do this with good storytelling to back it up. So, with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, here with 10 movies that tried to subvert expectations and failed miserably. Number 10, Black Christmas. Credit needs to be given where credit is due. The second remake of the wonderful 1970s horror film Black Christmas, which stands as arguably one of the most underrated horror flicks of all of them, is not a lazy redo in the slightest. It has little in common with the original film, and very much goes off in its own direction. This is commendable. But as every other movie on this list will also show, subversion on its own is not enough. You need a good script as well, and that is something that this film simply didn't have. The 2019 Black Christmas began development only a few months before it was released, so production of this was unusually short. And man does it show. From the tame PG-13 scares to the obnoxiously overt social commentary, this is a poorly written and unscary mess, with dialogue that feels like it came from a Twitter comments section. And it gets sillier and sillier as it goes along, but never seems aware of just how goofy it is. The performances are solid enough, and it isn't quite as cringeworthy as the first Black Christmas remake from 2006, but it still isn't a good film at all. The best thing that can be said about it is that it tried. It tried its best to be different, and that really isn't much. Number 9, Snow White. This year's Snow White, being a cinematic disaster, was largely expected. But what was less foreseeable was exactly what kind of failure it would be. Many predicted a lazy remake, and instead we got a product that was basically two different movies fighting to come out on top. An obscene Frankenstein's monster of a film. At first, the picture follows the original closely, and then Snow White leaves the home of the seven dwarves and hangs out with some bandits in the woods for a while. Now, these characters were the ones seen in leaked behind-the-scenes photos back in summer 2023, so it seems likely that these characters were originally the main focus instead of the dwarves. But following the never-ending stream of controversies that dogged this iteration of Snow White, reshoots were done to include the dwarves and other more faithful elements. Some of the bits with the dwarves, despite the awful CGI, are actually okay, while the sections with the bandits are a chore to get through. So this does something impressive in a bad way. It makes you wish for a lazy retelling instead. Yes, remaking a masterpiece is pointless to begin with, but at the end of the day, when audiences go to see a Snow White movie, they want to see her with the dwarves, not some random bandits dressed in cheap costumes. And all that aside, a remotely coherent end result would definitely have been appreciated too. Number 8. The Now You See Me films. Both of these terrible heist films, which focus on a group of magicians performing bank robberies and working for a mysterious organisation called the Eye, mastered the art of negating the entire feature through ill-judged plot twists. The existing two Now You See Me movies ended with huge twists that were undeniably subversive, but it would seem that no one stopped to think about whether or not they actually made any sense. The first film reveals that FBI agent Dylan Rhodes was actually the mastermind behind the robberies all along and was doing them to seek revenge against those he blames for the death of his magician father. Not only was this ridiculous beyond measure, but it completely ruins the film since it now turns out that the supposed protagonist was never trying to catch the robbers after all. The second picture's final twist is almost as bad. One of the main targets for Rhodes' revenge was magic debunker Thaddeus Bradley. Yet it then turns out that Thaddeus and Rhodes' father were friends and that Bradley is actually the leader of the Eye, thus negating the first film all over again. Now there is a third Now You See Me film on the way, so let's just see if they can maybe be a bit more clever with their plot twists this time around. Number 7, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This one was particularly unfortunate. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has often been criticised for being too repetitive, and it's important, especially in this troubled era of the wider franchise, that films take risks and break the mold. But once again, they need to break expectations in a way that feels earned. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a mostly unsuccessful MCU flick, completely failed to do this. What's frustrating about this one is that in making an Avenger the main villain, this sequel did do something really bold, and this could have been a great twist. The trouble is, they chose the wrong character to do it with, that being Wanda Maximoff. Just a year before this, Wanda had headlined the excellent Disney Plus show WandaVision, in which she underwent a powerful character arc of healing from her trauma. In this movie, she's a mass-murdering maniac who's once again unable to let go of the past. Did all of that past character development mean anything at all? Apparently not. Wanda's motives are also beyond ridiculous. She's trying to kill a girl with multiversal travel abilities in order to take her powers and go to a reality where she can be with her children from WandaVision. Those kids weren't real. Surely she understands that, right? As such, even if this sequel did do something undeniably brave, it did so in a way that gave audiences past MCU stories, Wanda's character, and poor Elizabeth Olsen, who deserved so much better, the finger in the most insulting way. Number 6, Blonde. Biopics frequently succumb to cliché, and it's never a bad thing when one tries to be more experimental. Love and Mercy, Rocket Man, and I'm Not There are all good examples of this. And the 2022 biopic of Marilyn Monroe also goes down the more avant-garde route, but not successfully. With Blonde, despite the film's impressive cinematography, its surreal, abstract content all feels so generalized and meaningless. It drags on for almost 3 hours while saying pretty much nothing, and having little in the way of plot or character development, making it a monument to self-indulgence. That's all bad enough, but what makes Blonde even worse is just how offensive it is. Despite claiming to condemn the exploitation of Marilyn Monroe, the picture does exactly that, reducing Monroe to a passive, sexualized object of the male gaze who's subjected to one brutalizing act after another. It also throws in a grossly offensive scene in which Monroe is sexually assaulted by John F. Kennedy, despite there being absolutely nothing to suggest that this actually happened. Now, it's fair to say that the Kennedy family has been through enough tragedy without a biopic coming out and making such serious allegations against a man who isn't here to defend himself. Writer-director Andrew Dominic is a really talented guy, and he deserves praise for trying to do a different kind of biopic. It's just a crying shame it worked out so badly, even winning the Razzie for the worst picture. Number 5, Serenity. Not to be confused with the Firefly movie, Serenity is a mystery thriller that had some fascinating ideas but totally failed to pull them off. The film appears at first to be about fisherman Dill trying to kill a cruel man named Frank, who's abusing his ex-wife and son Patrick. But it eventually emerges that these are all characters in a video game created by the real Patrick. In fact, the actual Dill died in Iraq years ago, and Patrick has created the video game as a way of keeping him alive. Serenity is a movie with no self-awareness. It telegraphs the big plot twist many times before the actual reveal scene, and it's fatally unaware of just how goofy and icky many of its plot elements are. Viewers are actually meant to take things like Dill talking to a character called The Rules and obsessively hunting a tuna fish called Justice seriously, and the overall story is so off-putting. So, Patrick has created a video game where an avatar of his father hooks up with an avatar of his mother, does sex work, and then kills an avatar of his stepfather. And at the end, the game gives Patrick the courage to finally kill his stepfather in real life. A young boy murdering a man in cold blood is this movie's idea of a happy ending, apparently. Again, no one could fault Serenity for its ambition, but its execution was abysmally bad. Number 4, Hulk. 2008's Iron Man was technically the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and yet weirdly enough, there is an earlier movie that sort of starts the whole thing off. That is 2003's Hulk, directed by Ang Lee and starring Eric Bana as the titular superhero. 2008's The Incredible Hulk, part of the MCU, was conceived as a follow-up to this, and indeed starts with Bruce Banner hiding out in South America, which is where he is at the end of the 2003 film. Hulk was rejected by most fans and has been largely forgotten now, which is probably for the best. Lee approached the film differently to many superhero blockbusters, describing it as a Greek tragedy. And while this was a great idea, this was ultimately an artistic failure. A noble failure, sure, but a failure all the same. Hulk lacks the good storytelling to realise the movie's emotional potential, and it's also another picture that seems to be at war with itself. It can't decide if it wants to be serious or a more light-hearted work a la Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, and then it fails at both. The character drama is tedious. There's little in the way of warmth or humour, and on the rare occasions that the film does actually decide to deliver on some action, these set pieces are forgettable and undermined by awful CGI. In the end, this movie is just really boring. Number 3, Joker Folie à Deux. Subversive in all the wrong ways would be the best way to sum this movie up. Joker Folie à Deux doesn't subvert on an interesting thematic or formal level, but rather it subverts the rules of good filmmaking and storytelling. Not to mention how to make a successful musical. Joker Folie à Deux is a film that goes way out of its way to defy expectations, but never has the good storytelling or commitment to character to back this up. For example, towards the end of the movie, Arthur Fleck, /Joker, dramatically renounces his Joker persona and confesses to his crimes. This was surprising, sure, but since it wasn't built up properly by the script, it feels totally unearned. Most of all, it's a complete regression of Arthur's character, and a good sequel should move their characters forward, not backwards. Similarly, it's supposed to be a musical, and yet it never quite commits to being a musical, seeming to feel insecure about it if anything. It's a film that does several out there things, but it's all bark and no bite, with this sequel ultimately doing little more than going over the events of the first movie in a crushingly dull courtroom drama. The ending is good, not to mention overhated, but that's the one thing that really works here. Fans of the first Joker have absolutely loathed Joker 2, and while fans often hate on movies excessively, in this case, the fan backlash couldn't have been more deserved. Number 2, Ocean's 12. In this awful first sequel to what might be the greatest heist movie of all time, there is no heist. It's supposed to be a heist movie, but whenever anything does get stolen, it's off-screen. And what did it offer instead of a heist? The crew talking about doing various robberies, but never actually doing them. An endlessly convoluted series of double crosses, Vincent Cassel's villain doing a silly dance through some security lasers, and worst of all, a beyond bizarre scene in which the character played by Julia Roberts impersonates Julia Roberts. The aforementioned Now You See Me films kept offering plot twists that negated everything that came before, and Ocean's 12 is very much guilty of this as well. The majority of the plot is about the team trying to outsmart master thief the Night Fox and steal a jeweled egg before he does. Towards the end, it appears that the Night Fox won and stole the egg, but Danny and co actually stole the real egg much earlier and were just putting on a show while the Night Fox stole a replica. What on earth was the point of pretty much anything that happened in this movie then? In general, this is not only a nonsensical film, it's a movie that's so boring and so anticlimactic that it seems to give its audience the middle finger. As such, it ranks among the worst sequels to a great movie this century. Number 1, The Matrix Resurrections. It's such a shame to put The Matrix Resurrections on a list like this. After all, this is a legacy sequel that actively avoids fan service and is the undeniable product of Lana Wachowski making this movie exactly the way she wanted to. Also, it's hard to deny that this is one of the boldest sci-fi sequels ever. Now, on paper, this sounds like exactly the kind of film Hollywood needs more of right now. On paper. Sadly, The Matrix Resurrections just isn't a good movie. Audacity be damned. Similar to Joker Folie à Deux, it's a film that's subversive in all the wrong ways. With its emotionless and ultra-low stakes plot, Resurrections goes against the rules of good storytelling, and while its refusal to just be an empty fan service piece is admirable, it also throws out most of the best things about the original trilogy. Compared to the mind-blowing spectacle of those films, this one's action scenes are unforgivably boring. And it also jettisons Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving, the best actors from the first trilogy. Resurrections then doubles down on the worst aspects of its predecessors by zeroing in on pretentious mythology and Neo and Trinity's chemistry-free romance, which sucked even in the 1999 original. And finally, for all the picture's swipes at franchise filmmaking, it does often repeat the original film, so it's guilty of some of what it's critiquing. In short, if there's one movie that proves subversion alone doesn't always guarantee a win, I'd say it's this one.